Hey, folks, welcome back to the Marketing Share Podcast. Glad to have you here with us. I'm Alec Cheung, and I'm here with my co-host, Barb. How's it going, Barb, today?
Hey, Alec, how's it going?
I'm good. You're a little bit under the weather, I know. I was too recently, but I think we still sound good enough and
I
maybe
th
look
I
good
think
enough.
so,
Yeah.
hopefully, I'm not coughing the whole time, but,
Well, yeah. But it's also seasonal, so maybe it's allergies. Hopefully, it's just that. But let's tell our listeners about our guest today. I think topic is kind of interesting. This is one that I personally don't know a whole lot about, so I think I'm very curious to talk to our guest today. Who do we got?
yeah, so today is George Swetlitz, and
Right.
George actually is the co-founder of a company called Right Response AI, and he's actually been a former CEO in the, B2C world of practices, okay, of
Hmm.
care practices, and I know that space as well, and so he actually found this issue, when you're getting reviews for
Hmm.
your practice, it's
Hmm.
real like a really big deal, right? It's like,
Yeah.
do you have a good review? If you don't, I've managed like multiple locations where, if you have a bad review, it can really hurt your reputation. So the
Yep.
notion of reputation management is really at the forefront of many of these high trust products and practices, right?
Yep. Yep. And look, reviews are really critical, especially in consumer-driven business B2C. It's also important on the B2B side.
Yeah.
Reviews are also your reputation is also critical, but it's a different game when you're B2C. Like reviews form a key part of it. And I think that at least from what I've understanding from what George has got to talk about, I think it's really interesting because he's looking at reviews not just as a way to respond to customers, but as a way to actually carry your marketing message forward. And I
Yeah.
think that's going to be interesting to cover that angle.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that we're moving more toward conversations,
Hmm.
as authenticity,
Hmm.
even in an AI world, is
Yeah.
really important to this discussion. So let's take a look and
Yeah.
we'll go talk to George.
Yeah. Let's go talk to George.
Welcome, George, to the Marketing Share podcast. How are you?
Yeah, great, great. Good to be here.
Thanks for
Good.
joining us.
Yeah. Hey, tell us a little bit about your amazing career journey and how you came to start Right Response AI.
Sure. So I've had a long career. I started in consulting. So I was at McKinsey for a number of years and then went from McKinsey into an operating role at Sara Lee Corporation. And so I ended up right after the fall of the Berlin Wall, was out kind of helping build a business in Central Europe.
Hmm.
And then I came back to the States and got back involved in consulting. And did that for a number of years, engaged with a number of private equity firms. And then in 2019, I was invited to be on the board of a audiology roll up called Alpaca Audiology, which
Hmm.
which you happen to be familiar with. And so
I
I
do.
started there and got more involved operationally. And then when COVID happened, was asked to step in as CEO, and so was there as CEO until the sale and a few years later.
Congratulations. It's not often that you find somebody who's come from your particular area of the business world, right? Like the hearing industry is sort of like a specialized little group, right?
Right, right, absolutely, yeah. And so to kind of bridge that, one of the things that was a real challenge for us at this company, Alpaca, was reputation management because essentially, as we had 220 locations. Each exists in its own local competitive environment. And we're trying to win in every market. And so reputation, how you're seen in each market is critical to your success. And so we became real we're studiers of reputation management and all the tools and resources that were available, which were not that great in my opinion. And so after the sale, ChatGPT came out. And when ChatGPT came out, I thought, wow, like this could really have an impact on all the different elements of the review ecosystem and how they all fit together. And so I talked to some members of my whole team and said, hey, you want to take a go at this? You want to take a run at it and see whether we can build something
Hmm.
to influence and change the space. And so that was the genesis of Right Response.
Yeah, that's really great. Let me ask a question to help our listeners. Reputation management could mean a broad scope of things, or it could be a more focused and a tighter scope of things. So, how are you defining when we're talking here reputation management? What's included in that?
Right. So that's a great question. So what the way I think about at least the element of reputation management that we participate in is kind of the review ecosystem
Yeah.
plus the competitive environment. So how do you fit? What are your goals? It's easy to think about reputation management on its own, but it's helpful to think about it in the context of the competitive environment that you're in,
Hmm.
because you can have two businesses that you think internally perform equally well, but they might in fact perform very differently because of the competitive environment that they're both in. And so you have to, your goal for one of them, even though they're the same, they operate the same, your goal for one of them may be maybe by just by the way the notion of reality might be much harder to be successful in one market than in another.
I faced the same thing, right, with 1,500 locations, right,
Hmm.
across the country. And, reputation management was huge, right? Because there's a million touch points, especially in a B2C business like that, right? I mean, think of any franchise, a multi-site business has the same challenges. And each touch point is a chance to either build or detract from that brand experience or that experience how folks are looking at it. So, how do you think AI is accelerating this ecosystem of reviews that we're always chasing?
Right. Well, it's impacting or can impact and is impacting in various ways all the elements of that ecosystem. I break it down into four components. There's review gathering, getting more reviews. There's review understanding, right? Sentiment analysis, voice of the customer. What are these reviews telling us so that we can do better? There's responding to the reviews because that's essential to trust, to building trust with the prospective customer. And then there's understanding what's happening in the local environment. And AI is impacting every one of those in at different pace, at different speed, and in different ways, but it's impacting all of those.
So let's drill down a little bit more on that. Like all four of those equally? Is it a progression? Um, like how would you coach another marketer who is faced with this challenge, kind of similar to what you've gone through, right? And having now been doing what you're doing and also now trying to apply AI, what's your advice to marketing leaders right now who are facing this challenge?
Right. So, I mean, I think maybe it would be helpful to walk through each of those steps
Yeah,
and talk about what are the dynamics and how does AI impact each of those. So maybe that's a way to do it. So if
sure.
we start on review gathering, clearly review gathering is essential because the number of reviews you get is a proxy for popularity. If you get a
Yeah,
lot of reviews, then
yeah,
you're popular. And if
yeah,
you don't get a lot of reviews, you're not popular. So you have to get a lot of reviews.
yeah.
And the key, the key to getting more reviews is personalization, right?
Okay.
Because if you think about the options in review gathering, the less personal it is, the lower the conversion of the request to the review. So on one end is emails.
Hmm.
Emails are, people don't check their emails every
Yep.
minute, right?
Yep.
So the conversion rate on an email might be 1%, 2%.
Okay.
Then you get to text messages. Now those are more personal because that text is more immediate to the customer.
Yep. Yeah.
Fewer people have that phone number. And so it's more immediate.
Hmm.
And the conversion rate on text messages is higher.
Okay.
It's 6, 7%, something like that. We also do QR codes. So we have features where people can issue QR codes to their employees. So think about home services, that kind of thing, where somebody's in front of a customer. For us, QR codes, the conversion rate is 50, 60, 70%.
Wow.
Why? because you're in front of the customer. You're
Mhm.
right there. How much more personal can you get
Yeah,
when you're right
right.
in front of them and you say, "Hey, would you give me a review
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
enjoyed, if you," right? That's so personal that the conversion rate is high. So the question is, how do you take something like a text message or
Mhm,
an email and make it more personal?
mhm,
And AI can help with that. So
mm,
how can AI help? AI can help with it because it can, rather than having a template, you can personalize the request. We know a lot of things about our customers. We know how long they've been a customer.
mm,
We know which person they work with. We know what services they buy. We know a lot of things.
mhm,
So it's one thing to do what we all do today, which is, thank you for visiting this business. Would you be kind enough to leave us a review?
mhm,
Versus saying something like, Marcy was so pleased to see you on the 4th. We value
mm,
so much the fact that you've been a customer for 6 years.
mhm, mhm,
It would mean so much to Marcy and the rest of the team if you would leave a review.
mhm.
Right? So now we personalize that review and we see that that can double or triple the conversion rate. So we
Okay.
take an email that might be at 2%, it jumps to 6, 7%. We take text messages
Yeah.
at 6%, it can go to 12 or 18%.
Okay.
So that's a way to use AI
Yeah.
to drive to do more for your business.
Yep, yep.
I'm sitting here listening to you, and even on the B2B side, which Alec and I have worked on as well as the B2C side, even a 1 or 2% email is quite high, right? So, and if you're asking in the B2B world, which is also important for high trust products and very involved product categories, I can't even imagine what's that's like to get an actual review from somebody. So, I guess you're cracking a code in an area that it's tough to even obtain the review, right?
Mhm.
Right? Right. So that's the first step. You can't do anything until you actually have a review.
Right.
Mm.
So you have to get them, and AI will increasingly be able to to get you more reviews. So
Yep.
that's one piece of it. The second piece then is the analysis of the reviews themselves, voice of the customer, sentiment analysis. Clearly, AI is just leaps and bounds in terms of what you can learn, not
Mhm,
only in terms of classification, but then in terms of analysis,
mhm,
analyzing the vast amounts of data. And we've spent a ton of time at Right Response thinking about what are the best ways of analyzing, presenting, thinking about. If you think about the old days, it was word clouds,
mhm.
right? You remember
Yeah.
the word clouds, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
if it was a burger joint, like burger would be in the center of the word cloud.
Right.
Well, who cares? Of
Right.
course, burger
Yeah.
is going to be in the center of the word cloud. So what our approach has been to say, especially for our larger clients, they have KPIs. They know how they think about the business. They know what the values are and the ways that they want to measure things.
Mhm,
And so we allow our larger clients to shape the categories and topics that we then evaluate
mm.
the reviews again so that it fits with their existing KPIs
Okay.
and can be very meaningful to them.
Mm.
And then we use AI to help analyze trends and things like
Okay. So then that's I remember the first 2 and I forgot the
that. Yeah.
last 2.
Okay.
What's the
So
3rd?
the third is review response,
Okay. All right.
right? And again, let's maybe think about that from a historical perspective. So review response started out where people would actually type responses,
Yeah.
right? And of course, that's very difficult to scale,
Yep.
especially in large organizations.
Yep.
And so when I was doing this, it was mostly templates. You would have template responses
Mhm.
and you would pick which template you were going to use and you would try to develop as many templates as you could. But it was very, I mean, it didn't really contribute to the conversation in any way. It was just a
Mhm.
response.
Mhm. And it
And
had to
then,
be
yeah,
and you'd had to have people doing that, right? Like,
that's right.
obviously, before AI, it had to be someone doing that, pulling, finding the right template, crafting up some response.
Right. Because, especially if it was a negative review, you'd want to find the
Yep.
template that was relevant to that particular negative review. You'd have to choose that
Yep.
and, and execute on that.
And by the way, is it your opinion, or your stance that, like, all reviews should be responded to?
100%.
Probably especially negative ones, but even positive ones?
100%. And
Okay.
I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay.
So the next step then was, AI comes out,
Yeah.
and what everybody does now, every platform now, it's a generic AI
Mhm.
response.
Mhm.
And you know this, you read them all the time. It's essentially just parroting back what's in the review, right? So
Mhm.
the review said, "Oh, the burgers were great, but I didn't like the fries." And the
Mhm.
response is, "Oh, we're glad you loved the burgers, and oh, we're so sad you didn't like the fries." It's that kind of
Mhm.
because it
Mhm.
doesn't know anything other
Mhm.
than what's in the review. So it's essentially just, in my view, templated responses and generic AI are essentially the same. They're a waste of space. They don't contribute to the conversation. They don't do anything. People think that they view the whole review system as kind of it's a check the box kind of thing.
Mhm.
We need reviews. We have to respond to reviews. I check the box. It's operations that does this. And
Mhm.
I did it. And so I'm done. KPI is high. I responded to all the reviews. That's great. Bright Local, in their 2026 survey, one of the questions that they asked had to do with, how do you feel when you see a generic or templated response? And the statement, of course, I don't know exactly how they phrased it, whatever it was, but it was 50% of consumers would are unlikely to buy from someone who provides templated or generic responses. Now, that seems like a very high number. And I don't know how people act on that because they're all generic and templated. So I don't know what that all means. But what it does reflect is that when somebody gets asked a question about that, it's a negative feeling that they have,
Mhm. Mhm.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense. And so the question is, well, okay, is there an opportunity there then? And so to differentiate yourself. So if you're in a list of competitors and people are trying to decide which roofer they're going to hire, and they're reading through reviews and responses, and you have responses that are very real
Mhm.
and helpful,
Mhm.
is that going to be positively received?
Mhm.
So that's the question.
Mm.
If the answer to that is yes, then how do you do it? And so
Mhm.
AI is the way that you do it. And so what we've done, so what we do is, when we onboard one of our clients, we read all of their historical reviews, all of their historical responses, and their website. So we
Mhm.
read it all.
Okay.
We use the reviews to understand what people ask, what people talk about, what are the
Mhm.
things that they talk about. And then we use the historical responses and the website to come up with messages, marketing messages. What do you say on your website about various things? How do you differentiate your business? And we create what we call a message database filled with these messages. And then what happens is, when a review comes in, we compare that review to all of these messages. We determine which ones are relevant to the review. And we then incorporate those messages into the response. So let's say you have a restaurant and people love the steak.
Mhm.
So a generic responder would say, "Oh, we're glad you love the steak." Our responder would say, "It's terrific that you enjoyed the steak. We work with a farm in Colorado, that we've been working with for 6 years, that just is phenomenal." So,
Mm.
whatever that kind of message,
Mhm.
we would build that into the response automatically,
Mm.
right? To make that a helpful, useful, informative response, so that somebody reading that would look at that and say, "Wow, I want to go there and try that steak,"
Mm. Okay.
right? That's the conversion opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, no one's closer to the bottom of the funnel than someone who's reading reviews. They're
Yeah.
deciding,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're deciding. So
Yeah.
however you got them to your Google business profile,
Yeah.
right? You could be doing social, you could be doing Google, whatever ads, whatever referral, whatever it is, they get there.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that decision is based on what people say. But what most people miss is that it can be greatly influenced by what you as the company say.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
that can have a big impact on conversion.
I think you have a term that you believe reviews are your conversation engine. So is
Well,
this
it's
the case,
conversion
or is
engine,
this a different,
conversion engine.
right? Or a
It's the
conversion, sorry,
conversion. Yeah.
conversion engine? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the conversion engine. That's we yeah, well, I mean, that is the central notion for us. If you can contribute to the building of trust through your responses, you're more likely to be the one that somebody picks.
right. George, having been on the other side of a not so great review for, whatever reason, on some kind of businesses in the past, always it was, what do we do about this? Right? What can we counter something? I mean, that was, always the big question. But what do you do nowadays when, AI is part of the conversation and they are actually steering people to your location? I guess it would be the same in that if you provide great responses like that, AI is going to pick up those responses and direct the conversation that way. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, no, I 100%. So the AI answer engines aren't biased to the review. They're biased to content,
Yeah.
right? They want content.
Hmm.
So when you say interesting things in your responses, that's just as important
Hmm.
as as a customer saying interesting things.
Hmm.
So what we find with our clients is that if you go and of course Google ranks the reviews not on recency but on relevance. So one of the things we look at is how many of our responses does Google deem to be relevant?
Mm.
And so we'll see in the relevant for our customers reviews that don't necessarily say a lot, but the response says a lot.
Mm.
And Google looks at that as relevant,
Mm.
as kind of content and relevant. And we see that when we look at that list of relevant reviews.
So you're saying that even a very um, short review, right? Even if it's just a short, very that doesn't say much, but it's positive. But if you respond well to that, it can still be a net plus for you. You can still capitalize on that
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah. So think
Yeah,
about that, the restaurant example. When you start talking about your
yeah,
vendor and this relationship with the farm and grain-fed cattle and all of this stuff that you're talking about, that's
yeah,
great content.
yeah.
So, the AI answer engine is going to say, hey, well, this is,
Okay.
we know this about this business now.
Hmm.
And we can say that they have a vendor that's this ranch. It doesn't matter where the content comes from.
Hmm.
It's just looking for content.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm tracking with you. And now I'm going to the next level, which is you're customizing a response, but you're using AI doing that. So how are you sounding authentic and not like a generic AI response so that you come back with this interesting response that's going to give you a robust kind of relevancy?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because and our customers talk to us a lot about this, especially our prospective customers when we're in conversations, because in our world today, AI is often associated with inauthenticity.
Hmm.
You go on to social media, you don't know what's true and what's not true. So there's this kind of feeling that AI means inauthentic. What I try to explain to people is AI means what you make it mean. So if you build this database with your messages, this is what you would say to a customer if they were in front of you. That's what our AI engine is incorporating into the response. Then that is authentic. Things are only inauthentic when they're inauthentic. But if you're the one crafting the database, if you're the one crafting the messages, it is authentic by definition. You've crafted it. You don't have to write it to be to be authentic. I use AI all the time to help me write, but that doesn't make my writing unauthentic. It's my ideas.
Yeah.
AI helps me write it in a smoother way, for example.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had a thought about a question here. You started in the beginning by saying one of the things that you want to do is you want to get more reviews. That's the number one thing, right? Just get more reviews. What if though you're in a situation where y- you're you're trying to get reviews, or maybe you already get reviews, but a lot of your reviews are bad reviews? Can the process of responding to reviews in a more effective and personalized manner, like you're saying, can that even still turn a bad situation and maybe not turn it around, but can that still have a positive impact on what maybe is a bad situation? Because bad reviews probably mean that there is something underlying that's wrong, usually, right? So how do you coach or guide clients that may be in that situation?
Yeah. So it's really the nature of the review itself. So sometimes reviews get to some systemic problem,
Yeah.
right? The front desk at a doctor's office is just mean.
Hmm.
You can't really, other than apologizing and saying we're going to work on this. There's communication. There are things that you can say, but you really have to go solve the problem, and that's where
Right.
sentiment analysis, voice of the customer, really matters.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? But other times, in fact, we just had this with we have a done for you service, and we just had this situation the other day where someone left a 1-star review because they came in and everything was out of stock. And so the guy, called and we talked about it, but the answer was, there was a convention in town and there was more demand than they thought. So you can actually answer that. You can tell the truth. You can say,
Mm-hmm.
this is what happened. This is not AI saying this, right? AI doesn't know this, but as a person, you can
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, apologize. We it was a there was a convention in town and just we got slammed and we were out. You were right. We were out when you came in. We
Mm-hmm.
apologize. It doesn't happen very often, but give us email us at this address and we'll make it right for you. And hopefully you'll enjoy the experience we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that can be a net positive for you. When somebody
Mhm.
reads that, that can say, wow, these people care and they're honest and they're trying to do things and nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So that unanswered is bad, but that answered can be a net positive.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay.
So, I'm thinking about this. We keep talking about reputation or retention as the new acquisition in the world, right? So I see an example that you just mentioned about how you can change something that's operationally broken or something in your organization. But can this be a force kind of multiplier for retention advantage? Or I mean, that's a revenue generator right there.
Well, right. And so when you think about it, one of my frustrations at Alpaca was the inability to get out in front of problems.
Yeah.
And when you have 250 locations or 1,500 locations, there's always a location going wrong,
Yeah.
always. And it was always frustrating to me that we couldn't see that in advance. And really, that's what we try to do with our sentiment analysis. The sentiment analysis of reviews is an early warning messaging system. In most businesses, you know the kinds of things that people will say if you're beginning to have a problem. And so those are the things that you can train your version of the sentiment analysis to find and report.
Mm.
So we have a thing we call it percent positive. And so if you have a if you have a topic and let's say the topic, for example, in an audiology clinic, one topic might be the quality of the fit, right? The
Mhm.
quality, are they happy with the result?
Mhm.
Over time that certain people are going to write in and say positive things and you're going to get some negatives. And over time, you might know that a 95% positive ratio is a good ratio for fit. So you can track that. And so when you start to see a location where for a couple of months, that ratio turns to 85%, well, there's a problem developing there that you can get in front of.
Mhm.
And that's how you can use sentiment analysis as the early warning system for the key KPIs for a business.
Mm,
Okay, now I'm going to flip over to what happens if you have a new practice, right? It's a brand new greenfield area and you don't have a lot of reviews. How does that apply? And what can you do if you don't have a lot of the key learnings of that particular area that can populate, your AI? I mean, what do you do to kind of ramp this up? Do you just provide lots of answers and lots of content for that new practice?
Well, let me kind of break that into two pieces. So, and I'll tell a little bit of a story. So I remember we opened a greenfield location in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Everyone told me, "Oh, Harrisburg is the greatest town, and we're going to make so much money." It was a perfect area, and we opened that location, and we were just got crushed. So I go in, I pull up Google Maps, and I'm looking around, and there's this amazing clinic group. They had 6 locations. We were like literally in the center of this 6 location amazing group. We never should have gone there. It
mm,
was the wrong location,
mm, mm,
wrong town, wrong location. If we wanted to be in Harrisburg, we should have bought somebody. We should not have tried to open a greenfield location.
mm,
So that gets to competitive analysis, right? It's really trying to understand what's going on in the town, who's great, who's not great. And importantly, you're going to have to climb the map pack in that town. What is it going to take to do that? You go to Google and Google says there's 750 reviews. And you sit there, you go, oh my God, how are we ever going to get 750 reviews? We'll never catch up. But if you drill down, they might only be getting 15 reviews a month now. They might have been around for 20 years. Google doesn't care that they got a 5-star review 12 years ago. Right? Google cares about what's happening now. Longevity matters, all those things matter, but there's a big weight that's placed on recency.
mm,
How many reviews are you getting now? What's the rating now? So you might actually see that they have a 4.5 rating on not so many reviews now. Well, now you actually have a target. You can say to your team, look, we need to be getting 15, 20 reviews a month. We need to be above 4.5. Now, if we're able to do that, we have a shot at climbing the rankings,
mm,
right? Of achieving that. Now, if there are 10 competitors who were all getting 15, you see what I'm saying? It all depends on the local environment. You have to understand what you're up against
mm,
before you start so that you can set goals
mhm,
and have targets in order to have a shot at attaining them. You might go into a town where all the providers or all the competitors are crappy. Well, now your job's a lot easier, but wouldn't it be a good thing to know that before you
mm,
start? So
mm,
that's the idea of the competitor analysis. And then to your point, Barb, once you know that, then you can say to your team, okay, we have to get reviews. This one who is really isn't responding, or they're responding with templated reviews. So we need to make sure that they're responding with templated responses, right?
mhm,
So we have to make sure that we're on point. We have great
mm,
responses so that we can beat them on numbers, on rating, and on quality. And I say all this thinking, man, if I had only had this 5 years ago, right, we would have been much more effective as a company.
mm,
We'd have 2 locations that were pretty similar, but when we would do, pay per click or social, we would have much higher conversion at one clinic than another. And that always used to blow my mind. Like, why? But it was all about, the competitive environment. If our reputation was a 4.2, but everybody else was at 4.5, we were just advertising for their benefit, right? We were bringing them to the Mat Pack,
mhm,
and then they would go to somebody else.
mm,
In the other town, we were a 4.5, and everybody else was a 4.2. So we were on top and we were winning them all.
hmm,
And so again, you really have to understand, you have to, part of the model for, for spend analysis, I think, if I was building an analytics model today, I would be looking at repetitor review quality, all of those
Mm.
indicators as part of my model.
Hmm. George, you at one time said that uh, relevance of the review was more important for Google, but then you also pointed out that recency does matter too. So
That's right.
is it equally, are they equally important, or does one have a heavier weighting?
So I don't know that Google, from Google's perspective,
Yeah.
it's going to be ratings and recency. So the phrase that I use for people is I say reviews are for ranking,
Hmm.
responses are for conversion.
Okay. Okay.
The responses don't necessarily get you higher in the rankings. Recency and your actual average rating, recent actual rating, so the number of reviews
Okay.
and your average rating near term is a huge weight
Okay.
on your rate, along with your website, a lot of other things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
The response quality is increasingly important for AI answer engines,
Yeah.
but it's absolutely important for the human
Hmm.
that's actually reading the review and the response, trying to decide what decision they're going to make.
Hmm.
Google made a decision.
Hmm.
Where are we going to put this person, this
Hmm.
business?
Hmm.
The human decides, who am I going to call? And
Hmm.
the quality of that response is really important to the human.
That's a good way to remember it. It's succinct. I like that.
So, what do you say? I could see some naysayers coming in and saying, you know what, George, at this point, 60% of the searches now end without a click anywhere and much more in depth look, right, at the reviews. How does, how do you respond to that? And how does it still make sense to have these responses that will be picked up by LLMs in some of those areas?
I think it depends on search intent.
Hmm.
What are you trying to learn? So I think, the 60% really is a lot of when people are trying to understand and learn and, those kinds of things. I think when people are actively trying to find a business, the map still gets displayed. They're still looking at the Google business profile.
Yeah.
That's a much more kind of tangible, I'm in buying mode. I'm not going to necessarily buy based off of, ChatGPT's, right?
Yeah.
ChatGPT can't read Google's reviews and responses anyway, right? Google blocks that. So, ChatGPT is looking at TripAdvisor and Yelp. They're looking at all these places that they can look because they can't read Google's.
Really?
Yeah.
That surprises
It,
me,
Yeah.
especially for
it,
Google's
it can't
Yeah.
searches.
read. Sorry, you said it can't read Google reviews.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
what
no,
about?
just do a search after this. Like go search like for a local restaurant and say, what
Yeah.
can you tell me about this restaurant? And when you look at, and you say, and in particular, I'm interested in customer sentiment or what people are
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
You won't see Google reviews showing up in that.
Huh? Really? What? Even if you do that using
Gemini.
Gemini, Google's
Now, the
own.
Gemini, yeah, that's their secret, right? But
Yeah.
so they can look at that, but
Okay.
but
Yeah.
ChatGPT can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it's behind kind of a little bit of a wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I would assume that this is super appropriate for businesses that are high trust, high involvement, personal involvement. Would that be accurate? Is that your big customer base?
I mean, we're B2C for the
Yeah.
most part, right? So yeah, when people are trying to make a decision,
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we're less so B2B because we're primarily, our fundamental building block is Google reviews.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That being said, we have customers that are Trustpilot. They get all the reviews on Trustpilot or
Yeah.
consumer affairs. You know,
Yeah.
the,
Hmm.
most of our customers are location-based businesses, but we do have a lot of customers that, y- they're big national companies and they're B2C, but they're not Google B2C. They're
Hmm.
Trustpilot B2C, consumer
Hmm.
affairs
Hmm.
B2C, BBB
Hmm.
B2C. So
Hmm.
and that's just as important for them too.
Interesting. Interesting.
George, if you do this right and use some of your techniques, how quickly can you expect to start seeing some results? I mean, starting with like just number one, getting more reviews to begin with, you know, like what's the time frame on these types of things?
Yeah, it's a couple months.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
a couple of months.
Okay.
Getting more reviews has always been something that people try to do. And you see that if you can get more reviews, if you can get people to so we have a thing in our review requester that allows you to ask questions. So you can seed it doesn't really work for texts because texts have to be short.
Hmm.
But if you have an email,
Hmm.
then you can ask people to write about certain things. You can say, hey, here are some questions that you might want to think about
Hmm.
including in your response.
Hmm.
And then you can get SEO keywords
Hmm.
Mm.
in the responses, which matters a lot,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially if you're a business where you're trying to expand your geographic area and getting a town name or a region name in that review itself tells Google, oh yeah, they service this area. So
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
those are things that can happen very, very quickly. So we see a number of things happen quickly. One, you can ramp up your reviews quickly. Two, it's amazing how quickly Google will populate the relevant results,
Okay.
the relevant reviews with these reviews that have your content in them,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
It's really fascinating how quickly that happens.
Quickly, like a matter of a few days or even a week
No,
or
a
what?
couple
Like
months,
couple months.
couple
Okay.
months.
So
It
you're
takes some
still in
time.
this couple
Yeah,
month time frame. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So then that means though that you do have to try a tactic for a couple months to give it
yes,
a good enough time to see if it's right, right? Because you mentioned some things in the beginning too about trying different ways to engage and get more reviews, right? Personalizing them.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, I got to tell you, this has opened my eyes to reputation management and what you can do now. I was kind of thinking that we're at the mercy of, at Google, but really we do have it within our control to change this dynamic a bit, right? Especially if this is kind of like the topic that Alec and I have gone through on AI, right? AI is about putting more of the sales conversation into your website or, to become more relevant on these
Hmm.
LLMs. It's really kind of the same dynamic that we're talking about, right?
Hmm.
If you have a more robust conversation on the review side and picking it up or in responding, you're probably going to be more at advantage as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's about bringing the website
Yeah.
to
To the
the
review.
review
Yeah.
system,
Right.
right? Is
Yeah.
you spend
Right.
all this time developing all this great content for your website. Just pick
Right.
it up and
Right.
use it in your review responses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's a great advice to wrap with. If our listeners want to work with you, tell me what's the name of your company and how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So it's rightresponseai.com,
Mhm.
rightresponseai.com. And you can go right to the site. You can book a call with me. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. We do strategy sessions and things like that for our customers.
Okay.
We
And
love talking to people.
is it right as in right wrong or is it right as in write a review? Right.
Yeah,
Your right
it's a
response.
good question. It's right as in right and wrong.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's
Okay.
the whole idea
RIGHT.
is that it's the right it's the right response.
The correct
It's
response.
how
Yes.
do you,
The right.
yeah, and
Right.
how do you engage in the right
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
the right
But
response AI.
But it's a
Yeah,
clever double entendre because then you
no,
do
you're
have
right.
to write the correct response when you respond. So
You're right.
Oh
I
my
hadn't
gosh.
that.
thought of that, but you're 100% right.
Alex got ideas for you.
Yeah,
Here we
that's right.
go. And I think you should develop that competitive advantage service line because
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
that would be a big idea, right?
Yeah.
All right, George,
George,
thank you so much for being part of the Marketing Share
yeah, thanks for
podcast.
joining us
Great
today.
It was great to be
information.
Very
here.
enlightening
Thank you for
conversation.
having me.